Is war ever truly justified, or is it simply the failure of diplomacy dressed in moral disguise? For as long as humans have walked the earth, we've waged war. From ancient battlefields soaked in blood to high-tech drone strikes executed from a screen, the face of war has changed. But the ethical question remains the same. Can any war be considered just in a moral sense? This question isn't just academic. It shapes global policy, religious doctrine, and the fate of nations. The notion of a just war has been used to defend revolutions, invasions, and resistance movements. But who decides what's just? And does such a label excuse the lives lost, the cities shattered, and the trauma left behind? In this exploration, we unpack the origins of just war theory, examine its use throughout history, from the Crusades to World War II and the Iraq invasion, and confront its relevance in today's morally complex conflicts. Whether you're a student of history, a seeker of truth, or simply curious about the line between justice and violence, this journey will challenge what you believe about the ethics of war. War is among the oldest and most brutal realities of human history. From tribal clashes to global conflicts, it has left behind ruins, revolutions, and unhealed scars. Yet amid its devastation, one haunting question continues to echo across civilizations. Is there ever such a thing as a just war? Can mass violence ever be morally defensible? Or is every war, no matter how noble the cause may seem, an admission of humanity's failure to resolve its deepest tensions without bloodshed? In this deep dive, we explore the origins of the just war doctrine, test it against historical and modern conflicts, and confront the profound ethical dilemmas that define warfare in our age of reason and technology. The origin of just war theory. When morality meets warfare. The idea of a just war is not a modern political invention. It traces back to the ancient world, taking clearer form in the philosophical and theological work of St. Augustine, 4th century, and later St. Thomas Aquinas, 13th century. Just war theory seeks to reconcile the undeniable evil of war with a need for justice, order, and protection. It is not an endorsement of war, but a framework that attempts to morally constrain it. The classical criteria for a just war: 1. Just cause. The war must confront a grave and present evil, e.g., defense against aggression, prevention of genocide. 2. Legitimate authority. Only duly constituted governments or leaders have the right to wage war. 3. Right intention. The purpose must be to promote good or correct a wrong, not to pursue vengeance, power, or economic gain. 4. Last resort. All peaceful alternatives must have been thoroughly attempted and exhausted. 5. Probability of success. There must be a reasonable chance of achieving the intended outcome. 6. Proportionality. The anticipated benefits must outweigh the harms inflicted. 7. Discrimination. Non-combatants must be protected. Deliberate targeting of civilians is unjustifiable. But how often are these principles followed in real-life conflicts? And more importantly, can they even hold in the messy, complex reality of modern warfare? Just war in history, noble intentions, or convenient justifications. 1. World War II, the archetype of a just war. World War II is often hailed as the clearest example of a just war. The fight against Hitler's regime, the Holocaust, and fascist expansionism presented a morally urgent cause. The Allies responded to aggression and atrocities on an unprecedented scale. Yet even this just war raised questions. Was the firebombing of Dresden, which incinerated civilians, justifiable? Were the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki proportionate responses or acts of strategic terror? These moments complicate the narrative. Even righteous wars carry moral costs that haunt the pages of history. 2. The Crusades. sanctified violence, or religious imperialism. Framed as holy wars to reclaim Christian lands, the Crusades were justified by the medieval church under divine authority. But in retrospect, many of these wars were less about salvation and more about power, territory, and revenge, cloaked in spiritual language. They raise critical questions. Can a war truly be just if it is driven by zealotry, looting, and massacres, despite claims of divine purpose? 3. The Iraq War, a case study in modern ethical collapse. Declared in 2003 with the justification of eliminating weapons of mass destruction and spreading democracy, the Iraq War initially sought moral high ground. However, WMDs were never found. Civilian casualties numbered in the hundreds of thousands. The region plunged into deeper instability and sectarian violence. This war serves as a stark reminder of how moral language can be weaponized and how justifications can unravel in the light of time. The war of words. When justification replaces justice today, political leaders are adept at using moral rhetoric to gain public support for military intervention. Terms like preemptive defense, peacekeeping operation, and humanitarian intervention often obscure the true motivations behind war: resource control, geopolitical strategy, and ideological dominance. This leads us to a hard truth. Declaring a war just does not make it so. Without rigorous ethical scrutiny and accountability, the language of justice becomes a dangerous mask for power. War in the 21st century, blurred lines and digital battlefields. In today's world, warfare has evolved. Drones, cyber attacks, economic sanctions, and proxy wars challenge traditional concepts of battlefield justice. Who is the aggressor in a cyber war? Can drone strikes be just when they kill both targets and innocents from thousands of miles away? Does remote warfare reduce the psychological barrier to killing? Modern conflicts raise questions that classical just war theory was never designed to answer. We must now rethink what ethical warfare looks like in a digitally connected, morally fragmented world. Is peace always the moral high ground? Many argue that nonviolence is the only truly ethical stance, that war, by its very nature, is incompatible with justice. Thinkers like Gandhi, Tolstoy, and Martin Luther King Jr. believed that violence, even for a righteous cause, ultimately perpetuates the cycle of evil. But others argue that inaction in the face of evil is itself a form of violence. If war is sometimes the only way to stop genocide, oppression, or existential threat, does justice then require action? The dilemma is profound. Is it more moral to fight evil with force, or to preserve innocence by refusing to kill, even if it costs lives? Conclusion. A mirror to our morality. So, is there ever a just war? The answer is as complex as war itself. While just war theory offers a moral framework to guide decision-making, it does not erase the horror, the cost, or the irreversible consequences of war. Even when fought for a noble cause, defending the innocent, resisting tyranny, or stopping genocide, war remains a tragedy, not a triumph. The danger lies not in searching for justice, but in how easily we convince ourselves we've found it. History is filled with examples of wars that were declared just, but later revealed as misguided, politically motivated, or morally bankrupt. Even in the rare cases where war seems necessary, the execution often betrays the original intent. Civilians suffer, societies crumble, and peace becomes even harder to attain. True justice is not only found on the battlefield, it is found in the pursuit of peace, the restraint of power, and the humility to question our motives before drawing swords. In the end, perhaps the better question is not, is this war just? But rather, what are we doing to make war unnecessary in the first place? Because the most just war is the one that never has to be fought. Perhaps, But even when war meets the criteria, it remains a tragedy, not a triumph. The goal should never be to justify war easily, but to ensure that peace is pursued relentlessly, and war only chosen with solemn fear and ethical clarity. Just war theory isn't a green light, it's a warning label. It demands we ask hard questions, that we stay vigilant to motive, method, and morality. And most of all, that we remember, war should never be our first answer, only our most reluctant last.